the Great British Manufacturing Podcast, brought to you by MTD, MFG and Jefferson.
Hello and a very warm welcome to this week's Great British Manufacturing Podcast. Coming up in this week's show, we've got a review of the latest positive news from the British manufacturing sector, which includes news from BMW, Branston, and a huge investment from Ibstock. We also welcome another special guest in Oliver North, the CEO of Yorkshire-based Venari Group. I'm your host, Joe Reynolds, and I'm joined by my co-host, Stuart. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Joe. Some fantastic news to report this week, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's get straight on with the show. Saint-Gobain, they've invested a huge amount of money in their Yorkshire facility. And when we talk about investments, quite often they can be months or even years away. But this investment is due to be complete very soon.
Absolutely. Paris headquartered firm is investing £30 million in its glass factory in Eggborough, Yorkshire, that will help secure Britain's long-term quality glass supply. And this is actually the largest industrial investment in the UK by the French-owned firm since 2000. The complex engineering construction programme will see the complete rebuild and installation of a state-of-the-art float glass furnace, which will replace an existing one, which has reached the end of its design life. And as you say, due to be completed by late summer, the investment programme also includes upgrades to other areas of the Yorkshire-based factory. Yeah,
it's a good start to the show. But moving on, Lotus, we alluded to it last week. There's some news from Lotus that just broke. But if you go to their website, they've got, I don't know how many jobs, pages and pages and pages of jobs. So if you are in the area, the various factories for Lotus, do take a look. There's pretty much a job there for everyone within the manufacturing sector. But yeah, they've announced something pretty special this week.
Absolutely. There's been a spate of positive news from Lotus over the last 6-12 months. And this week, they've committed to building electric sports cars in the UK, creating 100 of new jobs, as you mentioned, as part of a £2.5 billion investment programme that will lead to a tenfold rise in production. The British market expects sales of tens of thousands of cars a year by the middle of the decade, compared with just 1,378 last year. The Norfolk-based firm is creating hundreds of jobs as it gears up to begin production of its latest model, the Lotus Emira, formerly known as Type 131. The Emira will be officially unveiled on July the 6th before making its public debut at the Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Yeah, exciting times. But the next news story, Pfizer. If you go back 2 years before the pandemic, they were best known probably for their Viagra drug. But it's fair to say with coronavirus, they're probably better known for the vaccine now.
Yeah, I think you're possibly showing too much information there, Joe, but yeah, good knowledge. So American pharmaceutical giant Pfizer is investing £10 million in advanced manufacturing technology at its site in Kent. And this will considerably speed up the development of new breakthrough medicines. The pandemic has highlighted the need to create new vaccines and medicines at pace and scale. And chief among these is how to scale up production as new treatment to progress through the clinical trial process and on to commercial supplies. This investment at the site will help facilitate this improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the government, they're going to be announcing something fairly soon on basically other vaccines and R&D within this sector. So there's going to be a lot of, dare I say it, stiff competition between Pfizer, AstraZeneca and a few others, but it can only be a good thing for the UK.
Absolutely. The Vaccine Manufacturing Innovation Centre in Oxfordshire is due to come on stream. Well over £100 million has been invested in that. So, yeah, there has been critics of the government, during the pandemic, but I don't think anybody can question the vaccine rollout, which has been regarded as a huge success.
We'll come back to the news in a minute. I'd like to, at this stage, bring in this week's guest. Oliver North is the CEO of Yorkshire-based Venari Group, the UK's leading emergency vehicle manufacturer. Oliver, thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
How are you doing, Joe? Great to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Now, can you just tell our audience who's Oliver North and who are Venari Group?
Well, Venari Group was formed in 2019 as the catalyst to acquire Britain's oldest and largest ambulance manufacturer, a company called O&H Vehicle Technology in Goole in the East Riding of Yorkshire. Venari Group, we have a headquarters in Brighouse, and we have over the group and over the two facilities, we've got two 60,000 square foot facilities, which makes 120,000 square feet of lovely British manufacturing space.
Sure. And if you can just tell us about some of your recent investments, all the new jobs, etc.
Yeah, sure. We obviously started in 2019. I'd initially gone into O&H Vehicle Technology as a turnaround managing director, and halfway through the turnaround role, I'd say I'd left a big, very cushy position as part of an Austrian headquarters vehicle manufacturer as part in a similar arena, really. So going into a very broken British manufacturer with a very militant workforce throughout and a bit of a poor culture, it was a bit of a culture shock to me. But at the same time, when you see it making the turnaround and taking big steps forward, it was I became so attached to it that I reformed my old partnership with Ken Davey, my business partner, and we made the acquisition in the summer of the same year. So then, obviously, we set up a new headquarters in Brighouse, and right at the start of the pandemic, just perfect timing. And then, we had to get to work, irrelevant of what was happening. So because the supply chain was obviously struggling, and parts from overseas were more of a challenge. It almost forced our hand really into insourcing more. We procured more machinery. We became more self-sufficient. So I suppose you could say in a roundabout way that the pandemic really forced us into increasing our capability as a manufacturer. So, and it's not stopped there. We're going to continue with the procurement of more machines, a few more laser cutters, and more CNC routers, and invariably and inevitably more employees on the shop floor, which is a good thing.
Sounds fantastic, Oliver. And I know we've covered quite a number of your recent successes on MTD in Jefferson, including the contract with Ford, the Project Siren. If you can tell us more about that project, and also I know that you and Ford have pivoted production to help with the pandemic. If you could just please elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, going back to the pandemic, it was, when it first came, there was a big tidal wave of fear coming over the manufacturing sector. But I think more than anything else, it's highlighted, it's absolutely put British manufacturing under the microscope, as in, we manufacture, for the sake of saving lives. And in parallel with Ford leading the ventilator challenge, we were involved heavily in rolling out COVID test centres throughout the country. So, going back to the Ford thing, as in, and now being after immersion in Ford and Britain for the last 10 months, it's that was probably one of the most inspiring projects I've ever seen play out. As in, I think it was 12,000 ventilators they ended up scaling up to, and it was almost superhuman, as in. But I think it really did shine a light on the significance and importance of UK manufacturing more than ever, as in, manufacturing to save lives, and the borders were closed. So, we had to be self-sufficient as a country, and we need companies like that. So I think, once they saw the fact that they could genuinely save lives with their engineering skill sets, they maintained that and they approached us, and we played out a really successful and equally inspiring project with Project Siren, where we've designed and engineered and now releasing for serial production the world's most state-of-the-art ambulance, which will be on the streets of the UK from the summer of this year.
No, fantastic. Look forward to seeing that. And just touching upon borders and so forth, I know we've spoken about it in the past. Government procurement policy, specifically legacy EU regulations, adherence, and so on and so forth. You've explained something to me that I didn't know. If you can just please tell our listeners about what is actually happening, which may surprise them as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we all know, the exponential benefits to the UK economy of manufacturing in the UK. I read because I'm such an interested guy, I've read the 2015 report actually into UK manufacturing prepared by CBER, I think it was, and the revenue generation of £2.45 for every pound spent with a UK manufacturer such as ourselves with a similar SIC code. If you look at the ambulance market, you see a tiny cottage industry. And over the next 5 years, NHS England require 3,000 ambulances, as an example. An average cost of about £70,000 per ambulance. If you take that £210 million and multiply it by the £2.45 per pound spent, that's well over £500 million in revenue generation for our economy. But then when you consider the NHS is obviously then funded by the UK economy, it's just actually a beautiful cycle. There's no interpretation other than that. So I think it kind of underlines the critical nature, the importance and the significance of buying UK manufactured products in that sphere alone. But when you say that that's a tiny cottage industry and then you think about all the other industries, it really does kind of just highlight the significance of UK manufacturing. But no, going back to the procurement, as in, I know obviously now that we're no longer part of the EU, UK public sector still need to procure according to EU procurement law, and that nothing's changed in that respect. EU procurement law is still the law that they need to buy under, which means that if we as a Yorkshire-based company are supplying a Yorkshire ambulance service, for example, then someone a German company manufacturing in Poland is just as they've got just as much the playing surface that we have. There's no additional points scored in tenders for being down the road and employing local people who are paying into the pot that's funding them. So
my understanding that isn't reciprocated though, Oliver, is it? So the UK is adhering to these legacy regulations, but countries in the EU aren't. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, as in, we are now recognised as, in the EU as not being an EU member state, of course, whereas our public sector is still procuring according to EU procurement laws. If that was to change tomorrow, then obviously it's a different case. However, as we stand as of today, that's still the case. And from my perspective, it's hardly even a minefield. You can copy and paste the EU procurement law across to UK procurement law, let's say, and then make it able to score local suppliers higher on certain things. But at the minute, that's very much not the case. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Obviously, it's not all about price, is it? It's about supply chain, being local, and just in time delivery, things like this. And it's not saying we can't buy it. We should buy everything from the UK, but surely the UK should be first. Your first port of call should be here.
Yeah, without a doubt. I always say, I think if something can be manufactured in the UK as well as it can be manufactured in the EU, for example, then the benefit of the doubt should be given to the UK. As in, if we've got the exact same skill sets, same competencies, and same capacity, then, the UK manufacturer in that case should get the benefit of the doubt. As in, let's say that, if an ambulance was £100 cheaper from a German manufacturer, for example, or even £1,000 cheaper from a German manufacturer, the actual revenue generation from the UK far exceeds, it completely eclipses any financial benefit to the NHS that £100 or £1,000 does, so it needs looking at in its rawest form, not just on the face of it and on one sheet of paper on a quotation. That's not it's not realistic and it's not right.
No, absolutely. Well, we concur on this podcast. But in terms of future plans, pending contracts, is there anything you can tell us? Any new markets, opportunities within the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we irrelevant of any kind of economic landscape or any of the rest of it. As in, I think it's really given those manufacturers with the appetite and the desire to go in and be better. As in, when we talk about EU procurement law and all the rest of it, I'm not one to sit here with any sense of entitlement. As in, I think having a sense of entitlement is the first thing that'll kill any manufacturer anyway. So, as long as we develop something that is head and shoulders above the competition, such as Project Siren, we've got another few exciting projects coming through with Ford on electrification. So emergency vehicle electrification through ambulance, fire, mountain rescue, and we've got some really exciting increases in manufacturing. I think that's the only thing I can say at the minute. But our immersion with Ford and Ford's appetite to keep saving lives as they have done through the pandemic with ventilator, I think it's something that it's kind of shone a spotlight on the importance and the significance of being bringing the absolute ethics into manufacturing, and where possible, if you can save lives with it, then we should do so. Yeah, it's an exciting couple of years coming up for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your journey so far. It's still a young company. Thanks for your efforts during the pandemic, and also thanks for joining us on the podcast. I know you're a busy guy.
Thank you, Joe and Stu. I really appreciate it. Good to catch up with you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you.
Stu, fascinating interview there with Oliver.
Yeah, his passion is absolutely infectious, isn't it? He absolutely loves British manufacturing. The Siren project with Ford is remarkable. Great endorsement of British manufacturing. Looking forward to hearing more success stories from that part of the world over the next few podcasts.
Indeed. So many thanks to Oliver for joining the show. And if you want to be a guest on the show, please send us an email to podcast@mtdmfg.com. And don't forget to download the MTD MFG app from your usual app store, whether you're Android or Apple. So Stuart, getting back on with the news. We've got a company here. It's building on a strong reputation. Ibstock building a new factory.
Yeah, Ibstock, the UK's largest brick maker with 21 brickworks across the country, is increasing capacity to meet unprecedented demand, primarily from house builders. Expansion plans were first unveiled in early 2020, but they were put on hold due to the pandemic. Improved trading conditions have seen the plan revived and upgraded. Their existing Atlas site in Walsall will be replaced with a wire-cut clay brick factory, and the adjacent Aldridge brick factory will also be upgraded as part of the £60 million investment. And these redeveloped facilities would deliver annual capacity of 115 million bricks, a net increase in current capacity of 75 million bricks. So plenty of houses to be built from that, Joe.
Yeah, you can continue to add to your portfolio, Stuart.
Absolutely. I need a second occupation, Joe. Manufacturing's not for me.
BMW, 20 years of the modern mini production. So my sister had one of the first, literally in the first 100 cars off that. And I cannot believe it's 20 years old. I must have been like 2.
Well, remember, as a toddler. But when we put this on social media, people were saying exactly the same thing. They couldn't believe it was 20 years ago. So BMW Group's UK manufacturing plants in Oxford and Swindon, celebrating 20 years of modern mini production, as they call it. The plants employ over 4,500 people, including 130 apprentices, who all keep production moving to build 1,000 cars a day, one every 67 seconds. So quite an achievement.
Yeah, and a very popular plant, a very popular car.
Absolutely, it's never lost its appeal, has it? Since the 60s, it's stood the test of time since The Great Escape.
Yeah, I remember it well. So the next one, work started on a new factory for the Branston site in Lincolnshire. This is a good news story, and maybe one people may not be familiar with.
Absolutely, we're going from cars to potatoes, Joe, on this one. So we serve a wide church on this podcast. £6 million facility will be used to extract high-grade plant protein from potatoes at Branston site in Lincolnshire. Branston is working alongside Beehive Innovations as part of a project to improve potato crop utilisation. The commercial factory is the first of its kind in the UK, and we'll see the introduction of new technologies and capabilities to meet the growing demand for UK-grown plant-based ingredients.
And like you've just alluded to, we do report on a wide array of manufacturing stories on the show. With just this show alone, we've had, emergency vehicles, Volvo, Ibstock bricks, BMW's cars, and that previous story. So it's no surprise, really, that British manufacturers have recorded their sharpest rise in optimism since 1973.
Yeah, the findings from the latest CBI quarterly trend survey being published. British manufacturers, as you say, reported the sharpest rise in optimism since the early 70s, with investment intentions at the strongest for almost 25 years. The number of people employed in the sector soar, with hiring expectations at a 47-year high. Total new orders in the quarter to April grew at the quickest pace for 2 years. Domestic orders expanded at the fastest rate since 2019. Manufacturers also expect total new orders growth to accelerate next quarter. Let's hope it happens.
On a similar vein, hot off the press, the SMMT, good news on car production.
Absolutely. This has just been announced over the last few minutes, really. UK car production rose by 46.6% in March, first increase in 18 months. 115,498 cars were built last month compared to just over 78,000 in March 2020, when obviously the pandemic caused all UK automotive plants to be shuttered. And this information is from the trade body SMMT. Good news, but we do need to bear in mind that this week some car makers have announced temporary shutdowns due to the global semiconductor shortage, which is affecting the automotive industry and plenty of others besides.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out, I'm sure we'll see bad press on vehicle numbers next month, but it is, orders are stacking up, so they will catch up, these manufacturers. So it's more good news.
Yeah, the people I'm speaking to, I'm sure it's the same with you, Joe. There is pent-up demand. The car dealerships are back open. So hopefully people in the main have got some kind of savings as well. So I'm sure once people have sorted out the holiday arrangements, which I'm sure will be top of the list, hopefully they'll go out and buy a new British-made car.
I'm sure they will. Stuart, thank you for your time on the podcast this week. It's been another good one, hasn't it?
It certainly has. As I say, we've covered a diverse range of topics there. If you would like to be involved, we'd love to hear from SMEs. We'd love to hear from companies that are investing, new facilities, new factories, export orders, anything at all. Please, we'd love you to be a guest. Please email podcast@mtdmfg.com. Any feedback, any stories, you'd like to be a guest, you know where we are.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. And big thanks to you, Stuart. Big thanks to Oliver North. But the biggest thanks, as always, goes to you at home for taking the time to listen to this podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Great British Manufacturing Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and a review. You can find us on Twitter using @MTDMFG and @Jefferson_MFG.